So, Mr. OM, we're here for a 2023 Roundup. I thought it would be a good chance to ask you a couple of questions, see where your head's at after a really busy year. See if we can reflect on what's happened in 2022.
Am I on the Sam Lopez podcast?
This is like a little tester for your podcast for next year, which we're silently plugging. But that's something that's definitely going to come next year, right?
It's been something we've been speaking about for a number of years. I think using your previous experience with setting up podcasts, now I think having multiple kind of talking points, and I also think just my kind of influence now within the brand, trying to find where that sits best, long form content, kind of getting behind the scenes a little bit with the YouTube as we have done, and now I think opening up a podcast channel to be able to get guests on from my network, people who have achieved high performance in sports, in business, and just interesting people that we believe will give an interesting insight into their life and their story, and hopefully feeds well into this kind of narrative of without limits and pushing boundaries and everything that Marchon stands for.
Well, I mean, as we've seen this year, I'm not sure how we're going to have time for it, because it was a very busy year this year, and next year is due to be even busier. The first question I had for you was, how are you? After a really busy year in both business and personal life, how is Ollie Marchon holding up?
Good question to start. I think right now, good, like all things considered, good. I think I've alluded to on social media, which I try to be as open and as honest on social media as possible. Very reflective on my own performance, particularly over the last 6 months. It's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of kind of life and all the different hats that you potentially wear in your personal life and also within business. To sometimes kind of get caught up in that and kind of go with emotion and end up on that kind of rat race that a lot of us find ourselves on. So I think this time of year it's a chance to kind of zoom out, become quite reflective, and I'm someone that's quite critical of my own performance naturally. So whilst I'm in a good headspace, I'm very happy with the work that the business has done this year and that I've done. I think definitely I'm going to be coming out the gates with a little bit more strategy, a little bit more clarity on where we're headed. And I'm also something I feel as I've been missing personally is someone that's holding me accountable to the things that I need to be doing day to day to make sure that I am having as much impact as possible on the business and the people around me. So that's something I'll be investing in personally, a bit like a coach for myself, let's say, but not the stereotypical kind of Instagram guru coach that tries to accelerate your business to 7 or 8 figures. More so just someone who can really work with me on a one-to-one basis to get the best out of me as a leader, and that we can start to dive into areas of the business that we can try and really improve to then hopefully improve the customer experience for us. But I think for the most part, good. I've spent a considerable amount of this year nursing injuries from which was kind of a bit of a hangover from last year with the marathon, taking up some kickboxing, still training. So I think as I've alluded to being a bit of an aging athlete, but I think as I'm getting that little bit older, it's just understanding that the body doesn't quite react as it used to the high training volume, and that even though you might not see it in the day-to-day, the stresses of lack of sleep, having another mouth to feed, trying to run a business does catch up with you every now and again, and it does present itself sometimes in injuries and just being a little bit more stressed. But it's no need for the violins, but yeah, I think that's just an honest account of probably where I'm at after the end of a busy year.
I think it's fair enough, the sort of things you've been talking about recently in terms of like the coaching, not coaching, but the business mentorship side of things, considering where the business is at now. I just wanted to circle back to that and just ask, as a business owner, you put yourself in a position that a lot of people want to be in terms of being their own boss, but now you're looking back and thinking actually you want to have someone that's holding you accountable. Is that a tough decision to come to, or where did that come from?
I think it's probably a tough decision. I think you have to, park your ego for a second. And like I said, it's not like a conscious decision that your ego is in the way saying, I don't need any help. I think really talking specifically about our business, whilst COVID put the brakes on a lot of the things we were doing, it accelerated some of the other things we were doing, and also gave us time to accelerate some of those things because we were able to, again, zoom out and work on some of these projects that had potentially been, on the back burner. And then what happened for us was that last year, 2021, was a bit of a black swan event with our online platform. It'd been something we've been building since 2016, but it was really accelerated because of COVID, everyone going online, and largely us doing a really good job. That was coupled with some decisions to bring out our supplementation and things, and also almost bringing in another 30-40% more personnel to our coaching team. So all of a sudden you've got, more personalities, more people to manage, more people with huge expertise that we need to try and facilitate and get the best out of. And all of these products that we brought out, the supplements, trying to improve our merchandise, the second gym, the online, the app, which was again a huge investment, which took up a lot of time as well. It's sort of 18 months in the making. So all of these things kind of came to the boil at the same time, which was great and was really exciting. But then often you lose your way in making sure that each bit is really nailed down. We know where we're going with it. We've done our marketing for it. We're able to maintain the kind of the customer service on top of that product. And the physical products that we brought out was a whole new ballgame for us. There's, supply chain, there's manufacturing issues, there's logistics, delivery, all of that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden we'd gone from running a gym and an online business to sort of multiple strands within our business, which was a blessing and a curse, and a few lessons learned in that. And I think to bring it back to your question, reflecting now on the last 12 months, and particularly the last 6, you often need that kind of outside perspective. And I think a lot of businesses would do this in the way of having a CEO or a board of non-execs or advisors. And again, in kind of building a business, in my kind of naivety, you don't really know it's hard to predict when the right time is to have those people around you, because I still just refer to myself as a personal trainer that has a gym, right? And the reality is now that we're not that, and we aspire to be much more than we are today. So just being... just having that level of, I guess, self-awareness, that now having some outside perspective, and really sticking to, looking back at what our strategy was over the last 12 months, trying to bring a bit more of a strategic element to it for the next 12 months, so that these things that we've kind of been coming up against and the frustrations, don't happen again. Yeah.
I mean, you sort of alluded to it a little bit there with COVID over the last couple of years. A lot of change has happened within the industry. In 2022, what do you think the biggest change was for the fitness industry?
I think probably everyone going online. I think the poor gyms died out, and I don't think whether it was an immediate dying out due to COVID, or the kind of they tried to hold on and then it happened sort of this year. I think then the more aggressive gyms doubled down on their efforts. I think there's some really good private gyms and that have popped up, but I think the online boom has probably been where it's been most competitive. Again, having operated an online business since 2016, in fact prior to that, but more formally since 2016, it's very evident now that because of the attractiveness of coaches going online, kind of being able to work remotely from anywhere really, it's a lot harder to compete for people's attention in the online space. And often you're competing against people who are just, they're saying things for getting, like, for the sake of getting attention, rather than coming from a solid grounding of trying to have that person's best interests at heart. So that's been something I've witnessed most, both from a Marchon perspective and also what we've been doing with the PFCA. I think a lot of coaches having their heads turned to wanting to go online for the right or wrong reasons, and a lot of fitness consumers kind of not really knowing now where the answers lie for their fitness goals.
Yeah, agreed. The next question, what is your, and this literally first thing that pops into your head, what is your first memory of feeling pride this year?
Performex.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
So as the beginning of the year, I mean, the biggest thing for us was we had this exhibitor space in this room. It's at Tobacco Docks. Any of you that have been to that venue or that came to Performex, you'll know what I'm talking about. But an incredible venue for an expo, if we can call it that. And Marchon were very brave, and we took this exhibitor space on a floor where there was some other really established brands in the fitness industry. And this was the first time we were going to see our brand, which largely at the time, again, was just stood for a gym in Harpenden, stack up against all these other brands who had physical products and had been to many different exhibitions and fitness events and shows before. So our first time doing that, it was the first time we'd ever had a physical kind of retail area, because we launched our supplements there, and we also had our merchandise. And then, of course, myself speaking on behalf of Marchon on a couple of stages, myself and Jen speaking on behalf of the PFCA, the girls, Didi and Sammy, our nutrition girls, giving some talks as well. And just seeing the way the brand was represented by the ambassadors, all of the members of staff, and then seeing, the community come through, buy stuff, that had never been something I'd experienced before. Our talks were, bar the headline, acts or speakers such as Ben Francis, our talks, I believe, were the most well attended across the weekend. So that was nice, because it was the first time really we've got out the four walls of our gym, where usually people come down to visit us at our events like game days, etc. So we know they're coming, they've parted with money. We know they're coming there because they're going to value it. But when you take your brand somewhere else and you park it somewhere, you try and recreate the environment, and it's so well received. That was pretty special.
And did you have a bit of moment of reflection at that point, at some point in that time you were there? And do you remember when it was?
I'm like the world's worst at reflecting, other than this period right now at the end of the year. It's probably when I do most of my reflection. Like I said, I think standing back, I remember going to the nutrition and wellness room and sort of standing in the corner. The room was it was a fairly small room, but every chair was taken up, and there was people lining around the walls of the room to listen to Didi and Sammy. And like I said, I remember being on stage with Jens, and people even sat on the floor because there was no seats left. So it's in those moments that you realise that the work that you are doing, even though we're not the finished article, and we've got plenty more to learn and plenty more to try and to add to this space, the work that we're doing and the way that everything comes from a place of genuine good intention is really landing, which was special.
Very nice. So the next question: what was the toughest business moment that you've experienced this year? Whether that was in implementation or in activation, or anything that had happened this year that, as a business, you think was a tough moment for you?
Good question. The usual kind of stuff around staffing is always tough. I think just like managing people's expectations and personnel, that's always really hard. But I think probably the biggest thing for us was the opening of Stratford Gym. Whilst I'm not saying we project managed the whole thing, there definitely was project managers from the developers. That side, there was a fair few sleepless nights, I think, between myself, John, and anyone else that was kind of involved in that project. The timelines, this is the opening that gym has been something we've been trying to do for a number of months. The timelines are very tough. You got everything from trying to hire and onboard the staff, making sure the gym was ready. We didn't just have the gym, but we had the kind of retail area and coffee shop. So yeah, a few sleepless nights for that. Getting it ready, marketing it, making sure that we had, punters from day one, which was quite important. That was probably the toughest thing, because whilst I've built many gyms before, or a few gyms before, it's always been in a town where I'm well known, where my business was created, with people that are established personal trainers. When you, irrespective of whether you've got a brand as big as ours is in the fitness space, when you go to a place like Stratford, for example, largely no one knows who you are. So it genuinely is a standing start. And that's really, as much as they're the tough days in business, they're the most exciting for business owners, because, you've come up with a product, you believe in it, you're building a team around this product. And this is really when backs are against the wall, where you have to go out and market and sell this product and get people to truly believe in your vision as well, which is, it's the exciting bit, but also there's an element of, just, I guess, worry and concern that it doesn't land how you need it to.
For sure. And Stratford was a massive project, and anyone that's been will attest to how well it's come out. If we could just talk a little bit about, you mentioned it there a little bit, the lead up in terms of the planning, the execution of what actually happened. There was obviously a lot that was going on to build it. Was it different than you expected in terms of when the project initially landed on your desk, how it was going to transpire, or did it amount to what you thought it was going to be?
It's all a bit of a blur, but I think the biggest difference for me was how professional it needed to be. Again, my experience as a gym owner was very much like a spit and sawdust gym for my first gym, which was I've told the story before, was a converted cattle shed and a farm. Fast forward to 2016, we then opened Marchon Athletic, which again, we were given the keys to a largely derelict building, which had a couple of partition walls that me and my friends knocked down through the night. And then we opened this gym that went on to become the current Marchon gym, which again was a renovation of a derelict kind of factory building where we had certain bits to manage, and my best mate, who's a property developer, helped me with that. But we had to redo the roof, and so all the internal works. But Stratford was a completely different ballgame. This was a new building as part of a multi-million pound development of commercial and residential units. We're dealing with a developer who it's probably one of the biggest in Europe. They're an arm of the IKEA group, to show you their scale. So, everything, all the meetings I was pulled into, the lighting, sound tests, all of them was just like a completely new world for me. And largely it was a vocabulary and world that I wasn't familiar with. So I had to either learn or just sort of like smile and nod a lot of the time, and make the best educated decisions I could. But John was very much a big part in bringing that all together. He, again, previous gym owner himself, had built similar gyms to what I had done before. So between us, we kind of came together and making sure that we did our best by it. And like I said, working with the developers that side and the project managers. I'm pretty happy it's came out. I believe it's not only the best equipped. I believe when you walk into that gym, given the programming, the coaching, and the facility itself, don't think there's an experience like it in London.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, anyone that's walked in there would probably agree with you. So if you find yourself in London, a little plug, drop into Marchon Stratford. Next question, similar question, but in terms of your personal life for the last year, 2022 has obviously been a massive year for you personally as well. What's been the toughest moment for you personally?
Good question. Fucking Sam Lopez podcast, deep. Injuries have been one. I mean, like I see an osteopath every week for maintenance, and over the last 18 months it's been more for like managing my injuries. I also worked with the physio Alex Morel, brilliant physio, working remotely with him. But this is the first time when I've actually like proactively had to work with a physio and an osteo to try and bring myself back to full fitness and full health. Other than when I was in a rugby setting. So for sort of 4, 5, maybe 6 years, I felt pretty indestructible kind of with my training. Now might be sort of situational with sort of the training I was doing. And I had deliberately not been competitive for 4, 5, 6 years for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we might go into on the podcast at a later date. And we can unpack that. But I really didn't have a competitive bone in my body for a period of time. But the last couple of years, that sort of competitiveness began to come back. I don't know whether that was whether it was going to be in fitness, whether it was going to be in kickboxing at the time, whether it was going to be in jiu-jitsu of more recent. But I started to toe the line with competition, or being a bit more competitive. And when you put yourselves in that environment, sometimes you don't need to put yourself in that environment. You can pick up injuries. So injuries have been tough. Particularly because my mindset switched. I wanted to be a bit more competitive, and then I found myself not being able to. So that was tough, and maybe a realization that competitive sport isn't the right thing for me, given where I'm at with my business, my age, and kind of family commitments. And the other thing I think is just balancing family life, which I've been probably open about, probably not dived into again in much detail. But again, I think we can save that for the podcast next year. I think that's probably a better platform than things like social media, but or Instagram. But yeah, I guess the pressure of trying to manage a growing business with all the strands that we've aforementioned, trying to maintain a good mental and physical state through training, whilst trying to do all I need to do for my wife and growing family. Mila came in August, September. Gee, I can't even think. August. So that was September. That was a big change to my life as well. Having my first daughter, 3 kids, all under 4, and making sure that I'm as present as possible. It's still a work in progress.
Do you think becoming a father to a daughter now has changed you somewhat this year?
100%. Yeah, I still don't think I don't know to what extent, and I think the evolution of myself is going to continually happen over the next few years. I'm lucky to have Jen's a business partner and a very, very close friend who has a daughter a little bit further down the track. I think Ruby's now 3. So seeing his relationship with her and, hearing him talk, how he talks so fondly about the relationship and as it's developed as she's got older, I'm sure there's, plenty more surprises and good moments to come. But I think in the short time that she's been on this earth, it's definitely different to boys. So I'm looking forward to that.
And in terms of 2022, like I said, it was a massive year. A lot has happened. Is there anything that you would have gone back and changed in terms of how you've done things or the way things have panned out?
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm a big believer in everything that I've done. That I wouldn't necessarily go back and change it, because I do think I wouldn't end up where I am right now, having identified that I now need someone that I want to work with. Like, my self-development hasn't really come in the form of further education in the fitness space, because I no longer proactively coach. Whilst I tried to keep up to date with all the relevant literature, a lot of the stuff that I absorb now is a combination of all the great coaches that are around me and listening about their own specific interests within fitness and the things they're learning about. And then from a training perspective, I've kind of eked out all the performance benefits that I can get for someone that can only train. Well, I train a lot, but the limited time that I can train, the resource that I have. So from a business sense now, I guess that's the main thing that I identify as a business owner. I don't really think that I've pushed myself in that manner. So if I hadn't I don't really think that I've reached my potential, anywhere near my potential there. So one thing this year's done is highlight that I still have so much to learn, so much areas to grow. And I don't think if I went back to changing those things, I don't think I'd come to that conclusion right now. So I think these are all growing pains of a young, hungry business with really passionate people that work within it, all trying to do their best work. And I think now we're at a stage where a sort of transition where we've established ourselves. We're trying to grow. We're trying to impact more people. We're trying to spread this message even further. So I wouldn't change any of those things that we've done, because it's been a learning process. And whilst it's cliche, it's been a lesson to allow us to get to this stage to be able to make sure that we kick on in 2023. And I think it'll be the same thing next year as well, right? Because that's what this is. It's just continually testing and learning things. And some things will go really well. Some things you might get wrong. The idea is that you want more things that go well than that go wrong.
Awesome. So you spoke a little bit earlier. You mentioned John, Jens, a couple of the other members of the team. In terms of staff, Marchon as a collective, the group of individuals that work here are all very well aligned, and everyone's very close. Talk a little bit about what that means to you, and in terms of this year, how have people come together, what have been the additions, and how that's worked out for the business?
I think it's really important. The business was started, I guess, like a bit of a family business for myself, Charlie and Alex, and then my sister coming on board, and Eamon, who's, if I could adopt a son, that's probably someone that I would adopt. So we very much had that sort of, family culture and way of interacting. It means we're very close. It means we can be very open and honest with each other. But it means that anyone new kind of coming into the business, like, not that they necessarily have to adopt that mentality, but we work best when people can kind of come in, take ownership over their area of the business, know that they're really valued, but they can have open, honest, and challenging conversations when they need to be, because we are a small business, and whilst we may be one of the larger ones within the private kind of gym personal training space, we are very much a small business with a fairly young team. So I think that's really important. I think everyone that's within the business as it is today, and everyone that's been within the business that has moved on, have all played their part in getting us here. I think now that we are, somewhere between 15 and 20 people full time, it's very hard for me to have the same relationships with each person as I would have done when the team was 5. So it's really important that each kind of team within the team can set their own culture in line with the values that we set out as a business, and they can kind of maintain and manage that within themselves, because we kind of want to have that that team mentality where people can call each other out and people can just put an arm around each other when they need to, because I think that's always where we've excelled. So yeah, without naming sort of every name that now works in the business, everyone plays their part. I think everyone is a on the path to be a leader in their own right in their space, whether they're an in-person coach in the gyms, a nutrition coach, where they work in the brand and the marketing side of things. Just a really good team, and I often refer to myself as now just having to ride the wave of the good work that they do on a day-to-day basis.
And with the amount of change that's happening with the business currently and that will continue to happen, have you seen, again, not naming any particular individuals, but have you seen the team grow in ways that maybe you hadn't thought that was possible this year?
Yeah, completely. Again, I think going back to in a small business, it's not kind of black and white what your job role is. And I think there's obviously a primary job role, which is where your expertise and interests first lie. But there are times when you're dragged into, whether it's marketing, whether it's indirect sales, whether it's management of other people around you, whether it's basic jobs like cleaning and just operational jobs for our facilities or online and what have you. Again, a lot of our work is done online, and we're competing for the voices amongst big brands, amongst smaller independent brands. So there's a fair amount of kind of marketing, social media deliverables, and all that kind of stuff that we encourage our coaches and personnel to do. So I think it's been a year of, I think COVID actually allowed all of us in the business to get really uncomfortable. All of a sudden everyone had to thrust themselves onto social media. That was something that, going back a couple of years, that was something I made them all do. Everyone must show up on social media because now we are all online coaches for this period of time. So I think that gave us a confidence to start to do things that potentially, would have made us feel uncomfortable in the short term, and that's now rolled into where we are now, so we can operate on a high frequency, and we have a team of people who have multiple skill sets, which again can sometimes be a blessing and a curse, because people will be pulled into things quite frequently and across different strands of the business. But I think that's what makes our team so unique and so strong, is because they have that uniqueness.
Yeah, amazing. So looking forward to 2023, what are the business goals for Marchon?
Another great question. So we heavily invested into our app. Let's start there. I think let's start with everything Marchon stands for is great coaching, right? So at the heart of all of this is coaching. And I think it's very easy to forget that when you've got this brand that's got this app and all this kind of stuff. But behind all of that, when you break it all down, at the core of it is coaches. And whether that's nutrition coaches or fitness coaches, that's who we are first and foremost. So the day-to-day stuff, or day-to-day what these coaches are about, is just trying to improve their game when it comes to their education and their ability to communicate the way we see fitness with our audience. We also have a large audience of people that buy into our services with a range of fitness goals, from the sorts of people you'd see at our gym here in Harpenden, to the sorts of people you see who are quite different at Stratford, to then the people we have online, and then the people that we work with from a nutrition standpoint. So at the heart of it is great coaching, and we have a really nice broad skill set amongst the coaching team to be able to take people from pretty much anywhere in their training journey or nutrition journey and deliver them results. So we need to do a really good job now of making sure that is brought to the party on social media, because I think that's our unique point of difference amongst everyone else. Like, this isn't just one coach with their own beliefs. This isn't a group of coaches existing in an echo chamber. This is a group of coaches that regularly meet and challenge each other's beliefs and come to a common goal. And share a common goal and come to a common consensus on how we should do things. So anytime you see a new product, anytime you see us developing a current product, it's taking careful consideration, and we believe that we can bring huge value to this. So our main goal for next year, in a roundabout way, this is what I'm saying, is bringing that to the forefront of everything that we do on social media, putting great coaching, putting the Marchon great coaching back into our product. And we'll be doing this through our gyms, like I said, a real key focus on making Marchon HQ as good as it ever has been, if not better. Developing Marchon Stratford, which is that new venture for us, and hopefully some further gyms. We invested heavily into our online app, and I think this is probably the nucleus of what Marchon Training stands for in the online space. So we'll be continuing to build out our programming. We managed to, this is the best, we managed to, I think we're on over 1,000 subscriptions now online, which is the best we've ever had. So we're looking to really accelerate that. We want to get, and then take that community and get in front of them a little bit more as well, because I think just trying to bring the online to the in-person and bridging that gap is really important to us through our events. So building on the app, building what we do within our gyms, further development within the app, improving our events for our women's days, games days, and then how our training might fit in the competitive space with some of the functional fitness events that you see both domestically and further afield. I can't say the C word, but it rhymes with Ross and also rhymes with Twit, Ross Twit. I don't know where that came from. Sorry. But you know what I'm talking about now. So we're making a deliberate play in this space. We're hiring a coach who is a specialist in this area. We are going to affiliate, so I can start using the word eventually, but we haven't affiliated at the point of this podcast or YouTube. And the reason being is because we really want to professionalize the industry. And I think now, coming from a rugby background where most of the training we did in the early days was influenced by strength and conditioning, fast forward to where we are now, we provide strength and conditioning largely to the everyday people that are just trying to get better at life, right? To the everyday people that are trying to get better at life and then go and compete in recreational kind of sport, 5Ks, turf games, whatever, NFGs, whatever it may be. But also the kind of youth of today coming through that, you know, fitness could become their hobby. And if we can help them in their sport of the C word, we really want to do that. So we're going to make a really proactive play in that space. And then the ancillary things that we kind of do, you know, these daily Marchon touch points that build up, that's helped like kind of paint this narrative of healthy living, and take into consideration the moments before a gym, the moments when you're in the gym, and the moments post the gym. And I'm talking here about the way you dress and the supplementation or the nutrition that you might think about. We'll continue to build that out, so that our supplements, our clothing, and our nutrition support is facilitating that kind of high performance, high achieving lifestyle.
And a very similar question, but again, sort of bringing it back to your personal life. In terms of, other than the accountability factor that you mentioned that is going to be looked at next year, what are the goals you've got for yourself in 2023?
Fitness goals?
Goals in general.
I think it's a bit like, I don't really like talking about where I want to get my business in terms of like black and white numbers and things. But I do feel as though first and foremost, like the business is the baby, bar my actual babies, the business is the baby. And I've got this group of people, you know, the team that work here that are so good at what they do. And we're going to have more people that kind of come into this. And we kind of, I feel as though we're sitting at the base of this mountain, kind of looking up at this peak. And it's almost like destiny is for us to get to the top of this peak, and everyone kind of says it to us, and I think we've got this huge potential. So my main focus is making sure that we make considerable progress up this mountain. How that plays out and to what extent, I don't really know. You know, I've got metrics and numbers that people like to think about. Like, I'm obviously motivated by some of those things, but really it's more of a potential piece for me. It's about looking at everyone's potential within the team and where can each of us grow, whether it's in our education, whether it's in our growing areas of our personal lives, wherever it may be. I want to make sure that this business facilitates growth of everyone within it, and then the people that we serve, because that's what this business really stands for. So that would be my kind of business goals. I appreciate that's a bit kind of wishy-washy, but that's how I can articulate what I want to do there. From like a fitness standpoint, obviously qualified for the High Rocks World Championships. Sounds incredibly kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Grandiose, but I don't know how hard it was to qualify, to be honest. But we've qualified for the World Champs, and it's in sunny Manchester, which I'm looking forward to. So that's going to be something. I think it's about 5 months away. That's something that we'll be building towards. More recently, thanks to young Sammy Lopez behind the camera opposite me, got into jiu-jitsu, so that's something I really want to focus on next year. I think it's going to be a good hobby for me to really focus on. So goals are just trying to make sure that I get to training consistently, sort of 3 times a week. I will look to compete as well, if my body allows it and it's not me being too selfish with my time. And then probably just get back to like being real with myself, getting back to regular times where I can decompress and just release. I think, again, I've been doing some work on this, on why I think I've been probably quite stressed over the last 6 months, a number of things. But pre-COVID, I've talked about COVID way too much, but pre-COVID, the way I used to work was like a really intense period of work. Never really went out on weekends and things, but then we'd go away for like a week's holiday, and that would be my time to get closer to Lauren, to get closer to Leo at the time, and really kind of like refresh, decompress, and kind of come back to work with a renewed sense of kind of energy. Obviously, COVID stopped that for a period of time, and now the constraints around being able to do that have changed. I've got 3 kids, which taking them on holidays not very easy. As a whole kind of like operation that needs to go behind that. There's a sort of financial commitment that goes behind that. So trying to find those things in my life that can take place of those weeks, holidays and things that I used to take, which I'd take sort of every sort of 3 months. It's not possible these days. And often trips that I'm taking now tend to be centered around work, which then never really gives you a break. So whilst I'm not saying I'm looking to take my foot off the gas, because, you know, you'll see next year I definitely I won't be doing that. It is trying to find ways that I can decompress, refresh, and make sure that I'm bringing my best to work every day. And that's something that I really need to take ownership of myself.
Cool. And before we go into sort of like the wrap-up question, the last one, is there any moments that stand out to you for this year that you want to mention in terms of what's happened with the business, what it's achieved, or in terms of what you've achieved personally? No, there's nothing I've achieved personally that I want to highlight.
I think probably what people have seen is a lot from the business this year, and there has been a lot. I think the important thing for everyone to recognise is that, as it just so happened, everything kind of came to the boil at one time. So all these things have kind of come out now, and it's our now job and duty to make sure that we are refining those products and how they fit with certain people. And like I said, the main thing is that we know what we stand for. We've got a really great team of coaches and supporting crew. So it's making sure that this, as we come into next year, that is at the forefront of what we do, and it's going to be more of the same. To be honest, I don't get to the end of the year and go, what am I going to do so differently next year? Like this is just another, you know, when we flick over from the 31st to the 1st, it's just another 24 hours that have gone by. So for us, it's not going to be, you know, wholesale changes. I think there's been some really good lessons. There's been some really good things, and I think that's it's just going to be another iteration of what was this year, which was us trying to do our best at what we do. And that's all it really boils down to.
So, I mean, given that, obviously things move quickly, especially at the moment with the business. A lot's been happening, a lot is going to happen. What is some of the things you hope to be saying this time next year when we sit down and do this all again? I hope that my performance has been better. And whilst I may not have communicated over the last however long we've been doing this little YouTube, how critical I'm being of my performance. I want people to appreciate that this is just the way I am. It's going to be on my shoulders first, right? So I hope next year I believe that I've done better. And the reasons for me not feeling like I've probably done as well as I could have done is because for a large part of this year, I've struggled to know what my role is and how I can continue to influence the business above and beyond kind of what I do on a day-to-day, you know, on this phone, and also kind of the sort of interactions I have with the team. So I hope that my YouTube, my podcast, is successful, because that will be that's sort of 2 key priorities for us. I hope that
the current gyms that we have, and potentially one other, is now established. And I hope that it's just a little bit clearer. And I hope that the goal for us is to reach as many people as possible and have a daily Marchon touch point in as many people as possible's life. So if we look at the numbers in which we currently do in terms of our gym members, the people that are training with us online, and the people that buy our products like supplements, I hope those numbers have improved, because that will be the measure of our success. We'll be reaching more people. But we'll probably be having a very similar conversation where I'm being very critical of my own performance. I'm praising the team because they're flipping amazing. And we're still trying to work out what it is this life and business thing is all about.
Well, if you do want to see whether any of that happens, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we're going to document a hell of a lot of stuff that's going to happen next year. And yeah, that's it from me, mate.
Sammy, you're sick at... you should do the podcast, actually. No. Maybe it's a co-hosting.
No.
Thank you very much, team. Just from me, final one for me, this is probably the last... It will be the last YouTube of the year. And kind of the last formal correspondence. But we genuinely, I speak on behalf of the entire team, anyone that's come down to our gyms, anyone that trains our gyms, trains online, has come to any NFG or competition, or stopped to say hello at anything, High Rocks, etc. We are so grateful for all the lovely comments and interactions that we have. It makes our day-to-day work such a pleasure. So big up everyone in the Marchon community. We'll be coming out hot in January. We're really looking forward to another big year. Peace and love.